Oh, welcome. And as I said, I'll try to keep an eye on the chat and or wave or just take the mic if you have a question or there's something that's not clear. So let's do the next slide. We wanted to give you just a sense of our formal mandate for the network. If you see on our website, and when we formed the network, we adopted these two objectives. Every now and then people say, should we change them or whatever? Well, and we can. Um, uh, but for now, this is what we do together, is that we monitor the Government of Canada's efforts to implement the Women, Peace and Security agenda, and we promote discussion on that. We push the government to do better, and we also provide a forum for exchange among civil society organizations on the whole range of women, peace and security issues. So that's our broad goals, how we focus, what we generally try to work on. Next slide, please. So just a bit on our history. We have had organizations of civil society working on women, peace and security issues here in Canada for over 20 years. They've gone through two previous iterations. The first that we formed just before actually the 1325 was passed at the United Nations was called the Canadian Committee on Women, Peace and Security. And that was actually a very interesting configuration because we had civil society representatives, we had government officials sitting jointly with us, and we had a number of parliamentarians. So there were a number of MPs and senators that were participating in this group. It fell apart, believe it or not, around the invasion of Iraq, where we had civil society pushing to make a statement and to have Canada stay out of the war. And this got to be too politically contentious for the government officials and the parliamentarians, so that it kind of collapsed. So the second, we had a working group of the Canadian Peacebuilding Coordinating Committee. And we were lucky for a number of years to have a full-time staff person who supported the work of this group. But then the Peace Build, as it became known, lost its funding under the Harper government and disbanded. And so that working group no longer existed. So in early 2012, a number of us got together and said, even though we had no home or no other space, there was still enough interest to form a network. So on a snowy morning at Carleton University, we decided to form the Canadian, the Women, Peace and Security Network Canada. We decided it would be very informal, and people would contribute what they could. So we existed through the goodwill of our members. Organizational members would contribute a meeting space. Another organization sometimes bought us muffins so we could have something at the meetings. It was all done by volunteers. People worked on what they wanted to work on, basically, right? We had no strategic plan, and to this day we have no strategic plan. We members vote with their feet, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. But we actually we did have some successes, which we'll also talk about. And we decided there was the capacity for more and more formalization of the network. So after much deliberation, 2 years ago, we decided to incorporate as a not-for-profit organization. And this enabled us to start charging membership fees. For example, which then enabled us to have a little bit of money, which then once we were more formal, we secured a couple of very small contracts from the Government of Canada, from Global Affairs, which enabled us to hire Monique as our coordinator. And just one of the really interesting things I find fascinating in the way things work, when we started charging for membership, we actually had more people join. So when it was free, I don't know if people put a value on what you pay for, but it was very interesting that when we said, okay, now we're going to ask organizations to pay and individuals to pay as well, more people joined. Now we do for individuals, we do not want the membership fee to be an obstacle. So it's very much a sliding scale. And if it poses a barrier, we do waive it for students or low-waged or non-waged people. We ask if you can, there's a small contribution, but we do look at waiving it. So that's a little bit on our history, where we come from. I'm going to turn it over to Zoe for the next couple of slides. But any questions? No, we're good.
Okay, thanks a lot, Beth. I'm sorry if you can hear my dishwasher, so I apologize for that. It's a little bit loud, so hopefully you can still hear me. So, I've been with the network, but not since it started. So it was really nice to hear this history from Beth now, the things that I didn't know about. However, since I joined, I think it's been a bit like 3 years or more now. So I have been working mostly on the CNAP side of things with the network. This is also because Canada, my organization, is funded partially by Global Affairs Canada. And so we do work on peace and security around the world. And so this was a specific, let's say, interest as a topic. Yes, the CNAP is the Canadian National Action Plan on Women, Peace and Security. Thanks, Beth. And then it's also an interest of me personally, so it was a good fit for me. Just to answer maybe partially some of the questions that were asked into the introductions, no one asked me to join this. It was just kind of like the work was starting and I was interested in it. So this is much more how we do things in the network, is that someone will start an initiative, or 2-3 people, and then they will normally ask widely who is interested to join. So we do this either by email through the listserv, or in meetings that we have monthly. We just present new initiatives or new ideas, and we see who is interested. As Beth said, it's an informal way of doing things. So we're not like asking people to like formally register, but if you're interested in something, either to start it and have a new initiative, or you want to join a group that is already formed, we are just really open in that way. So hopefully, actually, this is my impression. So if anyone has a different impression, then, please share. But it's always been easy for me, let's say, to decide to join a specific initiative. So the National Action Plan, so this is Canada's second National Action Plan. So this is important to know that this is very much a government initiative, right? So for some of you who may not be as familiar with the CNAP, as we call it, there's a number of countries around the world that have elaborated these National Action Plan on women, peace and security. So they have various formats. And yes, exactly, if you're interested. Thanks, Katrina. So Canada is on its second. So the first one was from, so they're 5 years long. So this is a government initiative. The picture you see here is an event that we had co-organized. So you see Beth was on the panel, and the rest are the main ministers that are in charge of this, the departments that are, oh yeah, actually there's Kitty here. So we had civil society on the right side of the picture, and then 3 ministers, if I can count properly. And the last one on the left is Jackie O'Neill, who is our, so Beth is saying, no, I think I mistook one person for a minister, I'm sorry. And Jackie O'Neill is our Women, Peace and Security Ambassador for Canada. Did you want to say something, Beth, or?
Just to say that it's not important, but in the middle it was an RCMP representative, not right. A minister. And then we had Minister Sajjan from Department of Defense, Minister Bibo from International Development, and the whole event was launched by a keynote speech from Chrystia Freeland, who was the Minister of Foreign Affairs then.
Yeah, she's not on the picture. Most of these ministers have moved now, except Mr. Sajjan. So. But they were representing their departments. So this is when the second CNAP was organized. There were a number of consultations before this 2017 new one was launched, and so it's also expanded from the first one. So now we have 9 departments that are in it. Very much, it's sort of like, I don't want to say chaired because that's not the right word, but it's coordinated, let's say, from Global Affairs Canada, the Peace and Security Operations, no, Peace and Stabilizations Operations Program, PSOP. But however, the 9 departments have the same weights in the CNAP. So they each have their own plans, although some are not yet fully developed. And there's 5 general objectives to the CNAP, and it's very much made with indicators. So it's based on a reporting format, let's say. So they have to implement these objectives for 5 years, so until 2022, which is coming very soon. So we can talk about that later. And then they're supposed to measure each of these departments, their progress based on these indicators. The indicators are not that easy, let's say, to assess impact. So this is one thing that we've done at the networks, is we've been working a little bit with them on how they could have a better reporting format in the next. So this one is for this action plan, and then the one that should start next year sometime, or 2023, I guess, could have, let's say, a better format. So it's been challenging a little bit to really measure like progress on a macro level. And also the point that is here on the slide is that they're supposed to have a progress report twice annually. So this is each department. So that's 9 departments that are supposed to report on their progress for that year. And then there's a summary that is incorporating all the departments. I'm not going to name the departments, but it's any department basically that is involved in women issues internationally mostly, but there is also now slowly, let's say, integrated a little bit more of a national aspect to it, which is great, especially on Indigenous issues, but also on domestic violence and other things like that. So the departments of the Canadian government that are involved in these topics are also a part of the CNAP. We've only had 2 progress reports so far, so they're quite late with this one. There's been a number of issues a little bit related to the pandemic, but also to various electoral cycles, because their reports are actually an official product of the government and they have to be tabled in Parliament. And after they're tabled and accepted by Parliament, then they can be released publicly. And then the last point here is just that Global Affairs Canada is where the actual team working on the CNAP is located, and then each department other than that has a focal point that is responsible for this work in their own department, or to report on it. So any questions or interest on this? I can't see any. Okay, so in any case, if you have any thing you want to say, just say it, because I can't see any hands or anything. Okay, in terms of achievements on this, you have the list there. So one of the big things for me is that the network is considered by the government, and especially by Global Affairs Canada, as sort of their consolidation of the voice of civil society on this topic in Canada. Also, part of it is because we have so many members that we can say that we are representative of various, it's not just like one organization, but we have a lot of, you'll see the slide with how many organizations are members of us, and also individual members. So we can have a voice, let's say, in terms of representativity a little bit, although we don't have a lot of Indigenous organizations so far. And so that's the part for me that is missing. But other than that, we have a number of different organizations in the network that can then show the government that we are representing different people and different voices. So we had an input in the creation of the current National Action Plan, in terms of organizing consultations and having a direct input also in how the plan was developed. The second one is a really good one. We did advocacy in creating this position of a Women, Peace and Security Ambassador for Canada. So this is a new position that was created like 3 years ago now, I suppose, 2.5 years ago. and Jackie O'Neill is the ambassador. So this is a really good achievement because she's really experienced, she's great, she is really good as, let's say, being in the center of all of these departments to really have an input on how the National Action Plan is implemented. Then we have an advisory group. So this is related to this. So it's co-chaired by Global Affairs Canada as the main center of the National Action Plan, and by our network. So this is the way they say that they are working with civil society, let's say, on the action plan. And then there's a number of other, yes, of course, we can also have a voice, and we are very much open in what we can say because we are not government. So we consult internally, such as in this committee that we're a member of. So if you want to join, you're completely welcome. But we also try to discuss when we have our monthly meetings with the whole network to see what people can contribute. And then there's related processes, so there was a discussion on the feminist foreign policy in November. So some members of the network participated, and also the NATO civil society advisory panel. So all of this, the network is sitting on these, so we can have various members as people are interested to represent the network on these topics.
Thanks, Zoe, very much.
Yeah,
sorry,
I think I'm done.
Yeah, I was on mute. Sorry, I was talking away there. One of the things, and it's nice to see all the individual members in addition to the organizational members. One of the things, I was active in the network before I had an official job that allowed me to also do some of this work. So I think one of the strengths of the network, it allows students or consultants or people who don't have time for this in their regular job as a way to participate. So this is, with this slide, we're just trying to outline, give you a flavor of some of the things that we do. So as I mentioned earlier, a lot of our work focuses on monitoring and analyzing what the government is doing. And it's been really interesting because a number of people have said that our publications, and we've produced 4, are one of the few places people can go to get commentary and critique or observations on Canadian actions on women, peace, and security. So these are all on our website. And when we have a publication, what we do is we have an open call to members, and we said, this is the focus of the publication. If you would like to contribute a blog length submission on this broad topic, that's great. And so we just put out this gains, gaps, and goals a couple of months ago, and I think we had about 14 different members who said they would like to contribute. And then people write on what they want to write on, and then they it's signed, that chapter is signed by them, and we put it all into a collection. And I think it's really a good format because we don't have to come to a consensus on a position, right? We don't have to think, do we all agree with these pages? The chapter is the opinions and the analysis of the authors. And so we're able to have reflect diverse voices in the publication. So that's one of the things that we do. So if you like writing, or you have something that you would like to explore on Canada and women, peace, and security, watch for these calls for publications. So we're expecting the next progress report next month, so in June. So we'll be putting out a call saying, please, if you'd like to write something reflecting on the progress report, we'll be pulling that together then. So thanks, Katrina, for popping the link in the chat. We also have exchanges and dialogues with different government officials. So a couple months ago, we had an open meeting with D&D officials to talk about women, how they're working on women, peace and security issues. As you can imagine, a significant portion of that meeting did focus on the themes that are dominating the headlines about sexual assault in the military sexual trauma. Of course, the people we were meeting with aren't in a position to solve the problem or to give us concrete answers, but it was a forum to exchange views. Um, we've done things, as Zoe mentioned, we organized consultations. We had a 2-day consultation in April 2017 that fed in to the current National Action Plan. And so what Katrina popped in earlier, we're forming a working group to talk about how we do consultations for the next National Action Plan. So that's a very good example of what Zoe was saying of how we were working. It came up at a meeting. We said, look, who's interested in working on consultations for the next National Action Plan? We form a little working group. Members contribute as they, if that's of interest to you, then you would get in touch with Katrina and then work on thinking through what could consultations look like. We've done formal briefs to policy reviews, the 2016 Defense Review and the Review on International Assistance the same year. We've been invited to testify on a number of parliamentary committees. So that's been very interesting to bring the voices of civil society to some of the parliamentary processes. We have done some work with parliamentarians. Katrina, actually, when she was working in Senator McFedrin's office, was a big piece of the 2017 event that we organized for parliamentarians. We were just going to do another one a year ago when COVID hit, but this was an opportunity for our members to interact with MPs and senators. It was an opportunity for them to learn more about the Women, Peace and Security agenda and why it was important. So that's another target group that we've worked with. And as you've probably seen, we have the website, we have the blog. We use our listserv to exchange information on the blog that's on the website. We welcome signed blog posts, and we have quite a broad definition of what's acceptable. If there is a topic that you would like to write a blog on, you can submit it to the steering committee, and then we'll just review the topic, and then we'll review the final product to make sure it's not done a review like, is it does it meet these criteria? It's more, is there nothing that's inflammatory or will get us into big trouble or anything? So it's quite a broad spectrum of what we post on the blog, and then with Monique's help, we get it up on the website. So that's a bit of a overview of how we of sort of what we do and some of the different options. I guess some of the other things, we have a finance committee if people are interested in finance. Anything I've missed, Sunita, Katrina, Monique, Zoe?
No, I think that sums it up. I would just say with the blogs, we've sometimes done blog series on specific topics. So for example, around the last federal election, we had a series of posts on advice to offer to the incoming government. And we've had them around International Women's Day and around 16 days in November, December. So that's another area, those themed things, which are similar to our publications, but a bit more informal.
Great. Okay, is that still me? Yes, I think this is still me. Just a slide. Thanks to Zoe, she managed to fit all the institutional organizations onto one slide. So right now we have 33 organizations that are members, and we have 48 individuals. And as I was mentioning, the individuals are a whole range: students, consultants, people who are interested in the topic, people even working for other organizations, but maybe their organization doesn't qualify for membership. To be a member, it's quite a broad criteria. You have to either be a Canadian or a person resident in Canada. So we have some Canadian members, for example, in Geneva or New York. And then, of course, it's anyone living in Canada who's eligible for membership. We have, but you cannot be working for a government department working on women, peace, and security issues. So when you go, when you signed up to become a member, you noticed you had to self-identify on that conflict of interest policy, that you're not belonging, that you're not working for a government department that has women, peace, and security files. Zoe.
Sorry, but yeah, I just wanted to say that there are not 33 logos. So if you don't see your organization there, I took them from the website. So I think if you joined very recently, you may not have yet your logo on the website. So I just wanted to offer that clarification so no one is feeling left out.
That is correct, Zoe, because we are going to have a new website launching in just a couple of weeks. And I had stopped updating that page in anticipation.
Exactly. So I see that some are missing because in the introductions, I could see that people are from organizations that I didn't have the logo. So I think I have 28 there. So be patient with us if your logo is not yet there.
Thank you. And sorry to miss, we don't have Canadian Coalition for Youth, Peace and Security either. But anyway, but that gives you an example of the range of organizations, from peace organizations to development, humanitarian assistance, a wide range of organizations who are members. Okay, next slide. So what's our governance? We have a steering committee. All of the steering committee members are volunteers. So on this call, you have Sunita and Katrina and me. We are all steering committee members. The steering committee is nominated at the annual general meeting that we hold every spring and serves for a year. The steering committee is a working committee. We do actually, it is a fair bit of email, business by email, other kinds of information, coordination, decision-making, and we are currently meeting once a month. We do, for legal reasons, have a board of directors that legally oversees the network. That's a small, just for ease, it's a small group. And we do have terms of reference now, thanks to Sunita, and work by another ex-steering committee meeting, Dana. They did terms of reference for steering committee and the board of directors, which are now on our website. And then we have monthly network meetings, as most of you might have seen. I think they're now the second Tuesday of the month, which is a new development in the last 6 months. So that's our governance. Any comments or questions there? So over to Monique, and this is sort of what we would.
I think there's a question, Beth.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Benedict.
Yeah, I do have a quick question about the steering committee. I was wondering, like, how much work does this represent? If I wanted to participate, for example, and also for the board of directors, like who's usually represented in this board? Like, could I participate as a student, or it's only for professionals? Or
The steering committee, what would you say, Katrina? How much work is the steering committee?
It can be a lot of work, but it can also be quite reasonable depending on the time of year and on the commitments. So for example, we have a member of our steering committee who chairs the finance committee, And so when we were setting up our finances last year, primarily over the summer, that was probably very heavy for her. There are other times of year when we're not leading a certain projects that it's less intense, but we do meet every month, at least once a month. And we exchange usually every single week on different issues and different priorities and different work on different work via email. So it is, it is a commitment. It can become significant depending on what you choose to step up and lead. But as Beth and Zoe have mentioned, because the network is created and managed by us as volunteers, the steering committee also needs to take leadership on different issues. So a lot of things tend to fall on Beth in some ways because she is the chair and has most of the history behind all of this. And so it's our responsibility also as steering committee members to identify where we can support and we can take away or alleviate some of the tasks that often fall on Beth and also Monique. But a lot of work over the last year has also been taken away from the steering committee member, more logistics and admin work, because we are able to finance having Monique as a coordinator. So that's helped a lot in that sense.
And so early in the year, we'll call for nominations for the steering committee. I think we do that, January, February. So far, we haven't had to hold elections. We've only had 7 or 8 people volunteer to be steering committee members. So we haven't had to deal with the issue of what do we do if 10 people volunteer and we really have 8 spots, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. The board of directors doesn't really meet. It's more of a legal element, so there's not much work to do there. I think we just have 3 official directors on our board, and they are long-term members who have a history, but that's to meet the legal requirements. So that's not really a general opportunity for people to get involved in. Does that help?
Yes, thanks.
And I'm realizing we're almost at the end of our hour, so I'm sorry, we've talked a lot.
I just wanted maybe you can touch upon the other question from Benedict, like who is allowed to join? I think everybody. It's not a matter of being a student or
it's any member, but for the board of directors, we've usually had long-term members who have some continuity. For the steering committee, as Sunita said, we've had people who now we've put the terms of reference say you have to have been a member, I think, for a year of the network and have attended a minimum number of meetings to put your name forward for the steering committee.
Yeah, I think that's only just to show commitment. But in terms of the workload, I think it's again how you can manage. So I've not seen it being a difficulty. Like you would just commit based on what you're able to do. I think everyone on the board are volunteers too, so it's nice. Yeah. And also members. I think some members come in to support some of the work that we're doing. So it's a collective effort. So it's important to keep moving. So even if you're not on the steering, and watch out for the emails, I suppose, when we are asking for support. And if you can give time, it would be great, I think.
Which is a great segue to the next slide for Monique. I think we've already covered a lot of this, Monique? Because I'm just aware of time here.
Yeah. I was going to say, I obviously chose the right slides to present here because I don't have, I think a lot of this actually has already been covered. So I'm just going to talk first a little bit about how we operate. So as has been already said, most of the work is done by network members, and we take on initiatives that members then lead and organize. So that doesn't have to be done by members of the steering committee. Work can be done by others. So anybody can submit an idea or a request to co-sponsor an event or that. And so those go to the steering committee, and then they just go on and sort of take on a life of their own. So since last summer, as Beth said, I've been the coordinator, and so I take care of administration, reporting on contracts to GAC, as well as dealing with them on a day-to-day basis, coordination of the membership and the finances and the website and sort of just the general stuff. Yeah, and again, as was already mentioned, signed blog posts from members are always welcome. We like to be able to sort of have that new content on the website when we can. And just finally, so the network as a whole, because we started out in this informal way and we've sort of just gradually become a bit more formalized a bit at a time, the network doesn't sign on to letters or statements or campaigns as a network. Individual members can sign, but not that network as the network. So this is sort of an area that's currently under review. We've sort of had a draft policy that we've been considering for a while, so that may very well change. Are there any questions on that? Okay. Our finances. So this is pretty quick, actually. So basically where our money comes from, as was stated, we started charging membership fees in 2019 when we incorporated as a nonprofit, and that generates about $10,000 a year for us. Last year, we had 2 separate contracts with the Peace Ops section of Global Affairs, and one of those was to support a consultations, I missed that spelling mistake, process for the WPS Focal Points Network, which is a network of different countries who have WPS focal points, and Canada is co-chairing, I guess, still. That network. And so we did a series of consultations, a report, and a public webinar for that last August to October. And then we also had another contract to co-chair the WPS advisory group, so to support our work there so that we can participate. And for this year, we have another upcoming contract, again, to support our participation in the advisory group. So our finances are managed by a finance committee, which is headed by a treasurer, Susan, who's on the steering committee. The other people on the committee are Beth and myself and Nina, who unfortunately had to leave the meeting already. And we have a part-time bookkeeper who kind of keeps an eye on things in a sort of general, sort of high-level sense, but I take care of the day-to-day stuff with managing the membership dues and reporting to Global Affairs and such. And that's all I have to say for that. If there are any questions. No.
I know we're at time, but we can stay on maybe 5 more minutes if and we totally understand if you have to leave, but we don't want to leave questions unanswered. Just this is the last slide, and it was just to highlight some of the issues that we're working on. And perhaps the one to mention that hasn't come up to date is that we also have a working group that is looking at how the network can adopt anti-racist perspective, both in how we function as a network and in our analysis and the work that we do. So you might have seen, there was an email from Christine St. Pierre, another steering committee member, earlier today or yesterday with an update on that. So follow that process. So just the final thing that I would say is what Katrina put in the chat is, if you have an idea for an initiative, please just approach any steering committee member, or you could send it to Monique as coordinator. Monique, do you want to put your note in your email in the chat? And she can send it on to the steering committee. So for example, Zoe, as a member, said, I work with the CIC, the Canadian International Council here in Ottawa. Why don't we co-sponsor a panel on the Women, Peace and Security agenda? So then that went to the steering committee. The steering committee said, good idea. We went back to Zoe and said, great, let's do this as a joint panel. So that's sort of an example of how that works. We've had other people say, well, Susan said, I'd like to do an event with Canadian Women for Women Afghanistan. Let's do that. The steering committee says, yes, that's a great idea. Then we organize the event. So there's fluidity there, opportunity for you to join in what someone else is leading on, Or if you have an idea of something that you think works for your organization, or for you as an individual, you're quite willing to formulate that and approach the steering committee about a possible initiative.